Welcome to Screw the Commute, the entrepreneurial podcast dedicated to getting you out of the car and into the money. With your host, lifelong entrepreneur and multimillionaire, Tom Antion.
Hey everybody, it's Tom here with episode 438 of Screw the Commute podcast. I'm here with Michael Angelo Caruso. I just love that guy's name. Every time I say it or think about this guy, I think of like pirates and stuff. He just seems like a swashbuckling kind of guy. I've known him for a long time. So we'll bring him on in a minute. And hope you didn't miss episode 437. That was Dom Brightman. Now, I normally have people that are in their own business exclusively, but I just love his profession. I love librarians. They just have minds like steel traps, and they're so wonderful. So he's a librarian, but he's a leadership speaker as a side hustle, and he also has the Great North podcast, which I'll be on here shortly. And I'm going to throw one more in that's just a must listen for you. It's episode 436. It's on bad reviews, and this is not a reputation management episode. This is bad reviews are good for you. And it shows all the studies showing that perfect reviews make you seem non-credible. The actual sweet spot is 4.2 to 4.5 as reviews, because people then believe that the reviews are credible. So it goes into all the details of that and the percentages of people that look for bad reviews and what they do about it and whether they care about it, all these things. So it's a must-listen episode. So to find back episodes, you go to screwthecommute.com, and then the episode number /436 would be that one. All right, how would you like to hear your own voice here on Screw the Commute? Well, if the show's helped you out at all in your business or given you ideas to help you start a business, we want to hear about it. Visit screwthecommute.com and look for a little blue sidebar that says Send a Voicemail. Click on it. Talk into your phone or computer and tell me how the show's helped you, and you can get a big shout out on a future episode of Screw the Commute. Don't forget to put your website on there so you can get a big shout out. Now, pick up a copy of our podcast app at screwthecommute.com/app. That's APP. It can take us with you on the road. And also our giveaway book. And I'm going to say you're welcome right now, because if you do even a portion of what's in this book I'm going to give you, your workload will decrease. You'll ethically steal customers from people too slow to get back at them. It's how I've automated my business over all these years. Just one of the tips, we figured it out. We estimated a couple years ago, saved me 7.5 million keystrokes. It allows me to just be lightning fast in taking care of people, and that's contributed to enormous amounts of money. So check that out. We sell it for $27, but it's yours free for listening to the show at screwthecommute.com/automate free. Screwthecommute.com/automate free. Now, I've been teaching this stuff. I've been selling on the commercial internet for 27 years, since it started in 1994. I formalized my training about 23 years ago in a form of a mentor program, which I'll tell you about later. But about 13 years ago, I formalized it again in the form of a school. It's the only licensed, dedicated internet marketing school in the country, probably the world. It's imtcva.org. And I got to tell you, I'm a proponent of education, but what's going on with four-year colleges now, with my consumer advocate work, if they weren't colleges, some of these people would be in jail for the way they're ripping off families. So this school teaches hardcore skills that are in high demand. And we have people making money before, a few months into the school, because every business on earth needs these skills. And a little bit later, I'll tell you how you can get a full scholarship to the school if you're in my higher end mentor program. All right, let's get to the main event. Michael Angelo Caruso teaches presentation skills on 5 continents. He's worked with Hallmark, Bank of America, Verizon, Rayovac, Citgo, Nissan, many others. He's the author of Work Hacks and Dear Michelangelo, a father's life letters to his son. What's the beautiful book there. He's also has a highly rated speaker coaching class titled Present Like a Pro. And he loves exercise, movies, and travel. Michael, are you ready to screw?
Let's screw it, baby. Hi, Tom.
How you doing, man?
Good. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, been a long time.
I have a confession to make, man. You are an early hero for me. I love your style, and I especially love something about you that very few people in the business can brag about. You have so little pretense compared to other speakers and people that do what we do. What you see is what you get with Tom Antion.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I regularly spoke at these big multi-speaker events for over 20 years, and I've never been beaten in back of the room sales and never done less than 100,000. And what most people say is like, yeah, everybody else blew in like they're big divas and with their entourage, and then, oh, I got to get on a plane and leave. I just sat there I was the first one there and the last one to leave, and talked to
Yep.
people. I didn't have a name tag, so they didn't even know who I was. And then when I got up on stage, it just kind of blew them away. So yeah. If people would just be themselves, they'd probably do a lot better. That's for sure. But thanks for saying that.
My pleasure.
So tell everybody what you're doing now, then we'll take you back, see how you came up through the ranks.
Sure. Well, if you're listening to this post-COVID, everybody, there was a thing called the worldwide pandemic that shut everything down, especially us event-based speakers. And so everybody went online. I'm doing two courses online, a present like a pro course and also a course called Zoom Your Sales, which is a sales training course. And starting to get some calls about doing some live gigs, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, because you've done, I mean, your history is 49 out of 50 states and 2,000 presentations in how many continents?
5
How
continents,
many are there? I forgot. I got lost.
7.
7. Oh, wow, you're a
I think.
slacker. You're a slacker, man. You better get those other two. Yeah, so it was a big smack in the face for most of the people in our profession. Not really me, because I've been preaching this for 100 years that you should have a lot more going for you than just speaking. But so how
Yes.
was the transition for you?
I got to online courses pre-COVID, so again, not as bad for me as it was for
Good.
some other people. But I think a lot of people had to deal with the keynote fee and stuff like that because the early logic on it was, well, you're not having to leave your house, so we shouldn't have to pay you.
Right.
And then and then they said, well, you're not leaving your house, we shouldn't have to pay you full fee. And then I think a few of us in the industry decided we were going to try to hold the standard, and we did. And it wasn't long before people started to figure out that if you were delivering the same great content, the same unique personality and delivery style, you were worth a full keynote fee. But I think some people still struggle with that.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I mean, fortunately, I wasn't affected that much by it because I've been, selling online most of it. But I do remember back 9/11, a lot of really big name
Yeah,
speakers went bankrupt because there was
yeah,
no things, and there was no Zoom in those days, and
yeah.
easy way to do stuff remotely, and they had no products, nothing else except that being on stage running their mouth, and boom,
I
really
like
got
uh,
smacked.
I like your point about differentiation and figuring out different ways to help people. It is stunning to me how few speakers know how to write.
I agree. I have a transcript of a seminar I did called Repurposing: How to Sell Your Knowledge in 19 Different Ways. And speaking is only
Yeah.
one of them. There's just so many ways to help people. And that's what we do basically, is help people or motivate them or inspire them. And there's just so many ways to do it other than just speaking.
Yeah. Uh, and I think that comes out too in a lot of the way people speak. There's this big trend now toward extemporaneous speaking, which is, just talking off the top of your head. Everybody sees TED Talks and they think, well, this is easy. But the TED Talks are very well rehearsed. They're rehearsed even with cameras so that people know exactly what to do. But a lot of speakers, especially the ones just getting into the business, they get on stage, they think they're going to wing it, and it doesn't come off as good as they think it does, and then they have trouble getting rebookings, and that's why they're not as good as they think they are.
Exactly. And, I get, I get people like both of us, that help speakers. Somebody says, well, yeah, they really love me at church, you know. I'm like, church, they don't eat their young. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
they love
at least
everybody at church.
they don't do it in church. All right. They wait till they get out of church to eat their young.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and then they show me a demo tape and they say, yeah, I'm really good. I just want the business part, you know. And I said, you're really good. And I'm thinking, compared to what, you know? So
I'll bet you see this too, Tom. About 2 out of 10 people that try to onboard into my online Present Like a Pro course, about 2 out of 10, when I'm talking to them, I'm like, well, what can I help you with? What's the problem? These to me seem like the kinds of questions a good coach, a conscientious coach would ask. Where, the doctor frame, where does it hurt? And 2 out of 10 people tell me they don't have any problems. Two out of
yeah.
10 speakers. And I say to them, well, I guess I can't help you then. And they stop talking like, what do you mean you can't help me? I said, well, you just told me you don't have any problems. And here's the point. They do have serious problems, but they don't know it, right? We can all be better. I always say everybody thinks they're a pretty good speaker, just like everybody thinks they're a pretty good driver, but there are a lot of dented cars on the freeway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. First of all, it's harder to evaluate yourself. And then the
Mhm.
people around you pat you on the back. They don't want to hurt your feelings. And
Right.
yeah, it's like an old coal miner told me one time, the schoolhouse door is always open. You know, so
That's
no
right.
matter how big shot you think you are, you get, you know, you got to keep learning and improving. And whether you improve, I mean, yeah, it's probably a law of diminishing returns, but it's that attitude of always getting better that keeps you sharp and keeps you at the top of your game.
Yeah, and it's not just our industry. I heard Seinfeld talk one time about young comedians, and the question that was posed to him was something like, what advice do you have for young comedians? Something like that.
Hmm.
And his answer was very thoughtful. He said, well, a lot of young comedians never finish, I don't know if he used the word curating, that's my word today. They never finish curating their material, their content. You got to really pick it up and look underneath it, and look at it from behind, and look at it from the left and the right. You got to really know your shit to be good at something. And a lot of people are in a hurry to get to market. So, like I said earlier, it's kind of like bowling. If I can get the ball down the alley, it's good enough. Nobody ever tries to get good at bowling. But amazing things happen when you do take the time to really study, get a good coach like you, for example, and you just amaze yourself with the progress you can make in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and what I get a lot is everybody says, "Well, yeah, I'm good on stage. I just need the business. I need to get the." And I'm thinking, if you were really great on stage, business would come to you. Right? So,
100%,
yeah.
100%.
So now you have a background in entertainment and technology. That doesn't really kind of that's not a normal combo there. What's that all about?
I know. Well, my brothers and I all played musical instruments in the public school system. And at some point when we were growing up in our crowded household, I have 3 brothers, and my dad played trumpet. It was easier to combine our practice times rather than try to find an open slot in the basement schedule. So we'd end up playing duos, duets, and trios. And then we formed a little band, right? And we started getting invited to play these free events like Girl Scout cleanup days and stuff. And that's how the entertainment thing took off. It wasn't long before people were offering us money. Same thing we all went through in the speaking business. The first time somebody offers you money to speak, you're like, well, I don't charge.
Well,
And
wait a
then
minute.
you start
What's
thinking,
a Girl Scout cleanup day? What is that?
well, like any group would get together maybe and clean up a park.
Oh,
And then
I'm thinking it's whenever I walk by them selling cookies and I'm just stuffing them in my mouth and the crumbs are falling on the ground.
that's a different kind of
Yeah.
cleanup. So we do these free gigs, and we figured out how to get paid. Then we went on, started playing the club circuit. We did a lot of weddings, played a lot of cover tunes. Then we started writing songs, and I didn't know it at the time, but this was proving ground for being a professional speaker because we were learning how to go on the road, get paid, get rebooked, raise our rates, make people happy, right? And I always tell people now in the speaking business, it's just like the music business, except I don't have to come in through the kitchen, and I don't have to vote. Because in the band we voted all the time on what to do. I don't have to vote when I run my own speaking
Right, right.
show.
So you played
But
trumpet at weddings? You don't see that very often, do you?
yeah, Yeah, what was it back in the day, and our first instruments were all acoustic instruments, not rock and roll instruments. So I started on trumpet and then I picked up the bass guitar.
Mm.
I have a brother that started on clarinet, but tried to make money playing clarinet.
Yeah, really.
So he learned how to play guitar, and that's how it happened. And then the music business, like with most people, it's really hard to climb to the top of the mountain. And eventually I had to get a real job, and I ended up in the telecommunications industry. And this is interesting. I love people, I love being in front of people, clearly. And this telecommunications job, I was making 50, Tom, 50 outbound calls a day to people I would never meet to try to get them to cut a purchase order for telephone equipment.
Yikes.
And I learned the sales trade in that industry because I learned how to process signals without seeing the people I was talking to. It was all audibles.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
You
that's
know, when you're in front of a room, you know that when you're talking to the audience, there's actually two presentations going on. Your presentation to them and their presentation to
mm-hmm.
you. They're rolling their eyes or jiggling their keys or taking notes or texting, especially if you're not a good
Or
speaker.
nodding their heads in agreement if that's a good
That's
sign.
right.
Yeah.
And participating and
Mm-hmm.
sitting in the front row and not going to the bathroom every 30 minutes. So, a good speaker, I think, is monitoring both of those presentations simultaneously because you can make course corrections in real time to improve your presentation. And I learned how to do that on the telephone. Why didn't he answer me right away? Is he answering his email? Did he drift? Did he not like the price that I just mentioned? And again, back to the Seinfeld thing. When you dig deep into that, sometimes I would even ask him, "You hesitated just now. May I ask why?" And he would tell me. Sometimes they wouldn't tell me, but sometimes they would. And I was just learning more and more and more, not only about myself, but about the communication process.
I hope none of them said they pulled a Jeffrey Tubin on you. I don't know if you know it.
Some of you will have to Google
Yeah.
Jeffrey Tubin to appreciate that joke.
So you're being forced. It kind of reminds me of a sight impaired person, how their other skills, get sharper. So it
Yes.
seems kind of like that was happening with you because you were on there and all you had was the verbal cues instead of the visual.
100%. And I got that from the music business. When you're supposed to be playing a B natural and you play a B flat, all the guys in the band look at you. That's a pretty fast feedback loop. And when you're working alone, like a speaker or a writer, an author, unless you're working with an editor or some sort of continuity person, you have to be your own fast feedback loop. You have to understand really quickly what just happened. And it's not easy to get to the bottom of it when you're on a time schedule, say in the middle of a slide deck, or you're trying to close within 30 minutes. This is like juggling, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, and I just can't imagine why a lot of speakers haven't taken me up on what I have a method that's mostly offbeat in that I never use PowerPoint. I
No.
and I had to use it one time for a big spokesperson job for because they forced me into it, but I
Yeah.
don't, and so I never get caught if the time gets cut. Well, I have stuff on my desktop and I play videos and I show graphics and everything, but nobody knows if I'm missing anything because I don't have to I'm going to fast forward through 3 slides because we're running out of time. It's always like,
Right.
oh, I just gave you what I was
Yeah.
supposed to and the time allotted. A lot of people want to really depend on that PowerPoint for sure. It's death by
I'm with
PowerPoint.
you. And here's the problem with PowerPoint. It's sexy and it's easy, and yeah, your talking points are all set up, but it's linear, and real people don't like their speakers to be linear. They
Right.
like them to be real and conversational. And you can't be conversational if you're always on the way to the next slide. It's hard. And if somebody in the audience has a question, oh no, I'm not taking questions. I've got to get through the slide deck. It just puts you in a place that is stiff and stilted and uncomfortable. And ultimately, it's going to hurt your customer sat scores.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the reasons, like I said, I sold so much at the back of the room because if somebody would bring something up that was pertinent, I could just go on my desktop and say, "Oh, I got something I'll show you right now about that." Boom. And then rather than, well, maybe I'll get to that later, or I'm going to get to that later. No, I could take care of it right now. It's right in the moment, yeah, it's so I don't know, but most people just say, I need that crutch of a PowerPoint, and I never fell into that trap.
Yeah, good for you. And I think it makes a difference. I attended one of your events, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago, and you were so, I don't mean this in a bad way, you were anti-flash. You know,
Exactly.
most speakers, are worried about what they're wearing. Does their hair look good? Uh, moving around. The old speaker trick doesn't work, of course, is that you would walk from stage left to stage
Right.
right over and over and over again because you need to cover the room, right? And it starts to look like a tennis match after a while. The
Right.
balls just keep going left to right. And you sat in a high back chair, I'll never forget this, for 3 days. And you had some guest speakers, and you regaled us with content and wisdom. And it was all about the message, not about the messenger. And it was so powerful. I took a lot away from that program. I remember it to this day.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I did a podcast recently called Gentleman Style, and I'm
Yeah.
think and but I got to think about, because I book a lot of these things. Man, am I supposed to be on that show? Me? Style? Are you kidding me? It's like, am I? But besides me and my house is like we were decorated with early hand grenade. It's like so. So anyway, it was about marketing, but I don't know why they called it style. I wanted to ask you something about the name of your. You have a company called Edison House.
Yes.
What? How did you come by? Does that have to do with Thomas Edison, or how did you come up with that name?
Well, it's not a bad thing. I read one time to be associated with a great inventor. I read one time that you should never name your company after yourself. You might want to sell
Might
it.
want to sell it, yeah.
Uh, there are different things. So, and I lived in a little 2.5 bedroom bungalow on Edison Street when I first started, when I first hung out my shingle. And I lived in Edison House, and I'm like, well, Edison was a great inventor. Let's go with that for now. I had an epiphany about 4 or 5 years later because this is when the internet was just keywords were starting to come into the
Mhm.
lexicon. And I was in front of the room, and so I had this name, Michael Angelo Caruso, and I had a company name, Edison House, and it became too confusing for people. What do I remember? And I thought, well, if I want them to remember anything, I want them to remember my name. So Edison House is kind of like the umbrella company under which I operate, but I don't ask anybody to remember that anymore. If you can remember my name, we're good.
Yeah, that's the one that like I said, every time I see it, I say, "Man, that's a cool name." And
Thank you.
and I also know that you're heavily into Rotary. I was in Rotary a long time ago. I just couldn't keep up with the attendance requirements, but it's a
Right.
great organization. You're really in deep, right?
Yeah, they've waived the attendance requirements now. Society has changed quite a bit, and of course, with COVID, everybody's zooming. Um, I just love to give back. I love a systemized way for doing it. And also, not for nothing, my business has grown quite a bit because of all those relationships and all the talks that I've done for Rotary. So it's been a nice hand in glove relationship for me.
Yeah, and you have a podcast too. And I heard this lady that you were interviewing that had climbed 58 mountains in 75 days.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking,
yeah,
I
it's.
got enough trouble climbing out of bed in the morning.
I had never heard of this thing. She's what's called a 14er.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are a number of 14,000 foot peaks in Colorado, and these crazy people during the summer, because there's only a short window you can do it if you're a reasonable person. And she had never climbed before, and she got up one day and said, "I'm going to do this." And I was just so taken by her story, and she's so cute on the podcast. I
I
do
know
my
she
podcasts.
was she was very demure and like, oh yeah, the first time I tried these two mountaintops, I threw up when I was done.
Well, I
And
just love talking to inspirational people, and fortunately, I have a nice megaphone where I can help other people learn about these interesting people. I think you probably use your podcast for the same reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, this, like I said, this is episode 438 here. So I like to introduce people to entrepreneurs. And, on Mondays, we do a training session of something that's really made me a lot of money or saved me a lot of money. But on Wednesdays and Fridays, I really like to introduce people to kind of inspire them. And hey, people are doing all kinds of great stuff out there. Why not you?
Right,
Screw that commute. So,
right.
what's the name of the podcast? Your podcast?
The podcast is Talk to Me. It's on iTunes, Podbean, all the major platforms. I record in two formats. So if you want to watch the video version, you can just go to the Michael Angelo Caruso YouTube channel, everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and use the other keyword interview or podcast or talk to me, and all of them will come up. And of course, you can also listen. I know what a lot of people doing now, Tom, is they're listening to YouTube videos, which is crazy, but I do it all the time myself. I'm in the car and I can't watch the video, but I listen because it's the same audio track.
Yeah, yeah, it's great, and that's why this other social media thing, Clubhouse, is taken off like crazy because
Yeah, are you
it.
part of that?
Yeah, I'm there, and normally I don't get too excited about this stuff, but I can have it playing while I'm working, and
Right.
I can jump in and build a following and throw my 2 cents worth in. So I like the fact that it's just audio. I don't have to watch a webinar or look at graphics or anything. It's just you can listen. So we got to take a brief sponsor break. When we come back, we'll ask Michael about what's his daily schedule look like, what's his day look like for him now, and how he stays motivated. And also, he's got some things to give you. So we'll be back in a moment with that. So, folks, about 23 years ago, I kind of turned the internet marketing guru world on its head, in that guys like me were charging 50 or 100 grand up front for small businesses to teach them what they knew. And I knew a lot of these people. If you gave them 50 grand up front, you'd never see them again. You'd be hiding out in Mexico. So I said, that's too risky and it's not right. So I said, I'm going to fix this. So I just charged an entry fee that was like 10 times smaller. And then I took a percentage of their profits that's capped, so they're not stuck with me forever. So for me to get my 50,000, you have to net 200,000. Well, people really love this, and 1,700 students later and 23 years, it's still going strong. And it's the longest running, most unique, and most successful internet and digital marketing mentor program ever. And I have no trouble saying that because I triple dog dare people to put their program up against mine, and nobody will do it because I'm such a crazy fanatic. So it's unique in the fact that part of it is you get a immersion weekend, of course, when all the pandemic stuff's gone, in the Great Internet Marketing Retreat Center in Virginia Beach. We have a TV studio here. We shoot marketing videos for you. You actually live in the house with me during the immersion weekend. And then everything we do is one-on-one. So you're not stuck with people more advanced and then you're lost, and if you're advanced, you're not stuck listening to beginner stuff. So that's just not efficient that way. And you have that one-on-one with myself and my entire staff, and by appointment, unlimited. So nobody else will even talk to you, let alone teach you anything. So you also get a scholarship to my school that you can either use yourself or gift to somebody else. And we had one guy spend $80,000 on a crap education for his daughter, and she's working a crappy job. And then he joined the mentor program, gifted the school to his daughter, and she's now making $6,000 a month as a side hustle before it hasn't even graduated yet. So this is very powerful stuff that's in high demand. I've been living this life for 27 years. The pandemic hasn't slowed me down or even noticed, and neither has it affected my students. So check it out, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com, greatinternetmarketingtraining.com. I'm very accessible. Would love to talk to you about your future and your loved one's future online. I mean, this is a great legacy gift also for a young person in your life, for grandchildren, nephews, nieces, or your own kids, to really give them a great shot at having their own career without being stuck with massive student debt. All right, let's get back to the main event. Michael Angelo Caruso is here. He teaches presentation skills. He's He's spoken all over the world, helping people. And so, Michael, what's a typical day look like for you? Do you have this morning routine a lot of people talk about?
Yeah, I do. It's funny. When I was in the music business, I was never a morning person. We used to joke we got up at the crack of noon.
Crack of noon, yeah.
Yeah, and now I love my mornings. I'm up early. I'm a big fan of the old Stephen Covey book, Seven Habits.
Hmm.
One of the chapters is titled "First Things First," and so I do the most important thing in the morning first. So if I'm writing something, a book, or I have some sort of an article deadline, that's the first thing I do. I find that's my focus time. I heard one time, Tom, that there are two types of people in the world, either owls or larks.
Owls or larks,
That
right?
yeah, owl would be a night person, and a lark would be a
Hmm.
morning person.
Yep.
Well, I'm a lark now, so that's my sweet spot. Um, I can tell you that another habit that's really starting to pay off for me, actually, it has for a few months now, but it takes a little while to get it going because of the way the internet works. I've been adding one video a day to my YouTube channel,
Hmm.
which takes a little bit of time. And you can guess if I'm doing it once a day, there must be a system to it or a schedule to it. So it's part of the answer to your question. And when you get a certain amount of videos, everybody's different, or a certain type of content collected in one place like that. And YouTube goes to work suggesting related videos,
Right,
right? So if
right.
you've got it tagged out properly and posted properly, you can really get some sway on this platform. And I've really been starting to get a dividend recently. So the YouTube channel is really cooking. I'm proud of it. Um, and another thing I do that I always tell my students is try to be an interesting person, and interesting people don't work all the time.
Yeah, they do
So,
lots of other things that make life experiences.
yeah, like cooking. So I've been cooking quite a bit lately. How about reading? We're all speakers are so enamored with themselves. Let me tell you what I know. Let me tell you my
Right.
experience. I shut that engine down so that I can read. I'm reading right now Douglas Murray's The Madness of Crowds, which is kind of like an updated version of these books that used to talk about cults and how groupthink and gaslighting works. It's
Hmm.
fascinating.
Yeah.
And then of course, if I understand that content, I can deliver excerpts of it in my own programs. Of course, always providing attribution.
Right.
So it's all about becoming a better person and not working too hard and not becoming a slave to the business. I think a lot of people, like you were mentioning, uh, these different apps. Every a new app comes out, everybody wants to be on it, and you can't do that. You got to stick with your game. Otherwise, you go crazy. You'll never finish anything.
Yeah, and then you'll dilute everything to the point where you nothing is is
That's
working.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So you got some something to give the folks, right?
Yeah, these are just some places, early, easy entry places for us to get to know each other if you care to. I run a Facebook group called Present Like a Pro that is specifically designed for people who want to improve their presentation. So if you join this group, you'll be with a lot of like-minded people from all over the world. And I'm dropping content and ideas to it all the time, inspiration, motivation. It's a great place to amp up your speaking skills and make something of yourself if that's what your intentions are. If you're just speaking for work, you can get better that way too. I also have a newsletter. I actually never refer to it as a newsletter, but I don't have another noun. Maybe you can help me with that. But it's called the Friday Five. It comes out every Friday, of course. And they're just five little things that I'm doing that are interesting, that I think you'll find interesting. It's the most fun little newsletter that you'll ever receive. And you can subscribe to that at michelangelocaruso.com/Friday hyphen five. That's a lower F in Friday.
Yeah, that's a Caruso 5. All right. Beautiful. So great way to meet you. So thanks so much for coming on and telling your story, man. It's inspiring that done all this speaking around the world, but we're ready to pivot. And even before the pandemic hit, you were ready with these other things so that you weren't destitute like a lot of speakers became when 9/11 hit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're all in this together, and of course, I borrowed a lot of ideas with from speaking buddies, and I never think that I'm competing with anybody. I always think we're on the same team. We're all trying to do the same thing and help people. And I so admire you for that, Tom. And it's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Awesome, man. So everybody check out, we'll have all the links in the show notes for you, so you can just click on them and go over and check him out. He's the real deal. Been around a long time. It's not like one of these presentation skills people that said, "Oh yeah, I read a book on it. I know more than you." So, when you've been 2,000 presentations in 5 continents, and well, like I said, he's slacking a little bit there with leaving those 2 continents, but I'm sure he'll capture those one of these days. So thanks, man, and we'll catch everybody on the next.